Go ahead, Mark.
Bronson, congratulations. You've only recently seems like you only recently retired as a player. I know it's been 5 years, but what does it mean to you that the first opportunity to get in this Reds Hall of Fame, that you've been selected and get to do this and look back on your career with a lot of pride and happiness?
Yeah, I mean it's fantastic for one. I mean, with Rick saying only 91 guys have want to be the 91st person elected in there, you realize how small it is. I've never really realized how small the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is. The Reds Hall of Fame is just as exclusive and something you work for your whole life. I mean, you just want to play in the major leagues. You have no idea if you're going to play long enough to leave your mark in any way, shape, or form. And you also, one of the things that you don't think about as a player a lot of times is sticking with the same team long enough to build these type of numbers to be in their Hall of Fame. You could bounce around, especially in this day and age. Guys can bounce around every 2 or 3 years to different teams, and you could put up fantastic numbers, but never really stay in one place long enough to really have a home, right? And so, I mean, getting traded over here from the Red Sox in 2006, I didn't know what I was going to, get into. Really, I hadn't paid attention to the National League in a couple of years, and coming to find out, it's a place that now I call home. I'm here more than any other place in the country most of the year. You feel like you have a place to walk into in the clubhouse, and you still feel like guys treat you as if you're still an active player, and that's pretty special.
Hey, Bronson, congratulations, first of all. Secondly, you kind of alluded to this, but can you think about, you were pretty entrenched in Boston. You had that great thing in Boston. Could you think of your mindset when you got traded and like, oh, I'm going from Boston to Cincinnati, and then kind of how those feelings changed over time?
Oh yeah, I was sorely disappointed for sure. I mean, I don't know if there's a moment in my life that's probably been lower than that phone call that Theo Epstein gave me. I was the type of guy who just really loved playing in the same place. I love knowing the names of the beat writers and knowing the guys who clean the clubhouse at night, and the restaurants you go to and the people you hang with. And I was, 3 years in, you win a World Series in such a special place in Boston, and I really was entrenched there, and I was looking forward to doing that for the next 6 or 7 years. And for him to pull the plug on me just completely unexpected, it was a huge downer. I mean, I remember coming to Cincinnati and that first night trying to find my way through Mount Adams, which was almost impossible, without GPS back then. And, I just felt like, you came to spring training from a Red Sox camp where they had a chef and they were putting food out and we had no breakfast. There was a lot of things. We didn't have a chiropractor. We didn't have a masseuse at the time. There was a lot of things that felt like I was moving backwards in the game, but slowly over time, it probably took me the better part of I'd say the first 3 months of that first season in 2006 to really stop watching Red Sox games and feel like I was really a part of that Reds locker room. I feel very fortunate that I got off to a good start to have people enjoy me and love me right out of the gate and not be like, wow, we traded for this guy and he hasn't done anything for us. Right. So, part of that is a little bit of luck, but I got off to that great start. And then, once I realized it was a smaller town, it really fit the bill for me a bit better than a bigger town like Boston, a place I could go out at night where people weren't writing about you in the paper and stuff. It was, it's been a joy ever since.
Hey, Bronson, congratulations. When you kind of look back, like you were Red for 9 seasons, is there a favorite game memory that pops in your head kind of first thing when you think about Red's career?
I think the very first thing is probably just Jay Bruce hitting the home run to clinch the division, for the first time in such a long time. That felt like a very big moment. As far as a specific game that I pitched in, I'd say beating Bumgarner in the 2012 series, went deep in that ball game, had a no-hitter for a while. That was great. Also, just off the field, having the opportunity to be an older guy on a team, because when I came from Boston, I was a young guy on the team. I was 26, 27 years old. And I really felt like a lot of times I was like a bat boy on that team. I mean, it was such an all-star cast, but to come to Cincinnati and have some of the older guys like Scott Hatterberg and Adam Dunn and Ken Griffey Jr. kind of leave the team and leave me holding the reins of somebody who was going to have to show what professionalism was like to show up every day, to guys like Mike Leake and Matt Latos and Johnny Cueto, and Jay Bruce and Joey Votto. I kind of set the template for these guys early on. And that was probably as satisfying as anything I ever did on the field was to be able to be in that locker room and throw team parties and show guys what it was like to work hard, play hard, and still keep yourself healthy and give your team an opportunity to win every fifth night.
Did you feel like you were a bit of almost a throwback? You know, the power pitcher was becoming a big thing by the time you were here in Cincinnati, and you kind of did it differently. Did you kind of take extra pride in the fact that you didn't have to just use the power stuff, that you had to use your changing of speeds and your brain a little bit more?
Yeah, I always loved that about, when I was a kid, I could dominate the game probably until I was, I'd say, probably till high school. And then even, you kind of like 15, 16, you couldn't dominate with velocity. But then by the time you're 17, 18, you're kind of getting enough velocity back where you were physically dominating the game with a little bit of velo. But as soon as I got to the rookie league with the Pirates, I knew that, these guys could hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, no problem. And it wasn't, and that was in a time long ago, almost 25 years now when guys still hadn't evolved to the place where they are now. And so as the game was changing, my stuff was slowing down just slightly. And so it made my kind of the difference between me and some of the hard throwers even more exacerbated, right? And so as time went on, I really relished in the fact that, I felt like I was at war and I had a handgun and everybody else had like an AR-15, right? And that analogy to be able to kind of stay in the war and still pick some people off, and maybe, you weren't killing, the most guys in the game, but I was still there and people knew who I was. And it made it fun to go out there. And even in the end, having, a ligament repaired in my elbow and my shoulder torn and hurting me at age 40, and to be able to pitch that first half of the season in 2017, throwing 83 to 84 miles an hour and still finding ways to win ball games was always the joy in it. I relished in that more than anything else, having my back up against the wall and having a nice big crowd there and finding ways to take the sting out of guys' bats with almost nothing out there.
Now that you're a few years out, how do you assess the pitching situation now? Like, what are you looking for? What are you seeing coming up in these new pitchers?
Yeah. I think we've caught a 2, 3, 4, 5 year gap right now where it's been nothing but pure velocity, 95 to 100. And mostly all those guys only have the ability to throw a slider off that fastball. The days of a guy who can throw a nice bigger breaking ball and a little bit of a change up and kind of cut it and sink it a little bit, even up around 93, 94 as Kershaw used to. Some of that stuff has been completely absent from the game, but I believe the pendulum is going to swing back here very shortly. I don't believe that 95 to 100 with just a slider and not being able to throw a strike with your secondary pitch most of the time is going to survive the next 10 years. It's sexy sometimes when it works. It definitely works out of the bullpen, but for a guy who's going to go out there and give you 6 to 7 innings every night, I don't think it's tailor-made for that job. And I'm hoping that you start seeing some other guys who are throwing 93, 94, who have a little bit more of a bigger repertoire and can go out there and kind of compete, not only with a little bit of their skill set, but more what's going on between their ears.
Bronson, you just answered a question generally speaking about pitchers. Allison, was your question more toward our 3 young guys we have, or did he answer your question?
It was general, but yeah, I mean, I am, of course, thinking about Green and what we've got.
And Ashcraft.
Yeah. With Green and Ashcraft and the guys that I saw this past year, and Lodolo, they're just, you're seeing them just, wear the green off themselves, right? It's like, it takes a certain amount of time to establish yourself in the game. And once you've done that in one way that you can beat the hitters, then everyone in the league is going to adjust to you if you're good enough, right? And when they make that next adjustment, if you can then solidify yourself on that second turnaround and say, I'm still here, I can still give you quality starts, I can still win 12 plus games every year, that's when I think you're seasoned enough to say, hey, I'm an established major league player. I don't think those guys are quite over the hump yet. I really like physically what I'm seeing from them. They battle, they've got good demeanor. They're not getting flustered out on the mound, even having starts where they're getting roughed up. And so that's all a good sign. But I think it's going to take all of next year and maybe into that next one before you really put a stamp on some of these guys and say, hey, that's a frontline major league starter and he's going to be here for a while.
And have you been able to impart that kind of wisdom to them? Have you been able to talk with them a lot?
I chatted with Hunter earlier in the year. I didn't make it down to the clubhouse as much as I would like to this year. Just kind of bouncing around a bunch, but it's it's something it's very difficult to do being outside of the game, really. You can impart a little bit, but honestly, where the magic really happens is when you're watching a guy on a day-to-day basis from the dugout, and you can see what kind of emotion he has when it's second and third and nobody out in the first, and he gives up a couple, and to see how he bounces back from that. And there's these real subtleties, that you only get to see if you're next to a guy in the locker room every day. And now that I'm starting to be removed from the game, there's less and less guys inside the locker room that I know on a personal level. Right. It's really harder to impart some of that wisdom on them. If you go out at night with a guy and you drink with him at the bar, it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with the game, but it does. If a fight breaks out, you want to see what's going to happen, right? Is he a guy who wants to get in that conflict, or is he going to sneak out the back door because he knows he needs to stay healthy, right? There's all these subtleties that can happen outside of the game that tell you a lot about a guy's makeup. And I don't get to see that firsthand anymore. And so it makes it a bit harder for me to kind of really make an impact on some of these players.
Hey, Bronson, kind of going back to one of the questions I had. When can you identify a time when you're like, oh, wait, Cincinnati's kind of home now? This is a place where I'm going to spend a long time, and you felt comfortable and all that.
Yeah, it was because I got off to a good start. It felt good right away. I had a couple of buddies that I played ball with back in the Pirate days that were around town. A guy named Sam McConnell, kid named Brian O'Connor, and Mike Ayers. We kind of came up through the minor leagues together, and they were all from this area. They had all played for Midland at some point. And so that made me feel a little bit more at ease and at home in that first year. But getting off to that great start really helped, being an all-star and people recognizing you in a positive way around town. It helped. But I would say it was probably by the end of the second year, by 2007, after I established living in Mount Adams, I would come back in the wintertime. We'd do Reds Fest. I'd always stick around a little bit longer. I would come back to Cincinnati in times when there was nothing going on, just because I wanted to be in that locker room and I wanted to work out down there and I wanted to hang out at the stadium. And, it took a couple of years, but, it started feeling like a place that I could be for a very long time, where everything about it felt good. It felt like it was my speed. It didn't feel like the town was too large to kind of get your hands gripped around it, And, you make friendships along the way. And as those grow, you find that you just don't want to leave, and I've always loved routine, and I loved going down to the locker room on off days and working out and, checking your email on the computer in there and eating food inside the locker room and taking batting practice with your high school friends, in the wintertime, just off the machine in the batting cage. It was just a real hometown feel for me, and it happened relatively quickly. And I think that's part of what this town is about. It makes you feel at home if you stay here long enough.
Anything else, guys?
Hey, Bronson, I have a question for you. Thinking back to, is there any one person in your life, or a coach or a family member, that you found kind of drove you to be who you are and made you successful? Because the way you talk about pitching is very methodical, detailed, and you're using every little edge you can get. Is there anybody that really helped you get to that point, or is that something you developed?
No, that was set off by my father. I don't know, they showed these videos on ESPN one time. I think it was probably 2013 maybe, where I was lifting weights as a small child. I was on this video, I was 8 years old and I weighed 55 pounds. I squatted 235, I deadlifted 255 and benched 130. And, I was a skinny kid, but my father had grown up in this culture down in Key West, Florida, where him and his friends were squat, benching, and deadlifting as much weight as they could. They called it powerlifting. They would go work construction during the day and they would do that in the evening. And when he realized that I could throw the ball across the infield, before anyone had ever even played catch with me, like a 12-year-old when I was 6, he thought, oh, I'll put him in the weight room and at least get him a free education. And so all these years in the weight room with my father, working out and thinking about playing in the big leagues, there was just a lot of strategy we would talk about, because in order to push that type of weight, no matter how old you are, it takes you 6 months to gain 5 to 10 pounds on a squat or a deadlift, right? And inside of that, it's like, what kind of clothes are you wearing? Like, are you wearing a tight suit? Are you wearing baggy clothes? And, my father would spray paint different colors in the gym because he had read that pastel colors would calm prisoners down. So he wanted to do the opposite. And he would paint really bright colors in it that we'd be looking at to push some of this weight. And so he was talking to me about strategy a lot. And that then went into baseball, where we were talking about, changing timing, right? As a kid, I was doing the same things Johnny Cueto was doing. I was dropping arm angles. I was hesitating on the mound. And all of that stuff was a culmination of him kind of imparting how he felt about the world on me. And so by the time I got to the rookie league with the Pirates, I was really, probably 5, 6, 7 years ahead of other guys that were 18 years old as far as my maturity level about how to execute on the mound. And that, that just continued to be polished by myself and by pitching coaches that I was around in the game. And but if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for my father kind of doing that for me, not only physically with the weights, but mentally, I don't believe in a million years I even play in the minor leagues. I probably think I was, a good athlete by nature. I probably would have played at a decent college, and that probably would have been the end of my baseball career.
Thank you.
I have just one more. I would love to know if you're going to bring out the guitar for your own induction ceremony.
Yeah, I talked with Rick yesterday, and I thought about this for a while because I've been to so many, not so many, but been to a handful of these inductions. And I can remember sitting there. It feels like a gala. It feels like a show, and Sean Casey's was very memorable. But Sean's like a WWE wrestler, he's like, "What's up, brother?" And he can bring it in that way. And I have no doubt that I could just stand up there and talk and make it interesting. But I feel in my heart of hearts that without bringing the music infused in there, it wouldn't be complete. And part of that is not just the fact that I like to play music, because I didn't pick up music playing until I was 22. I was in AA with the Pirates. But if you rewind to the beginning of your career, there was 1995 was right kind of the heyday after Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and Nirvana had hit, and I come out of high school. And so I'm dragging 100 CDs around the minor leagues. And in 1996, I'm playing for the Augusta Green Jackets, and you're riding on buses sometimes from 8 to 13 hours. And I'm listening to August and Everything Afterwards from the Counting Crows, and you're listening to Dave Matthews, and you're listening to Bush, and you listen to Hootie and the Blowfish, Crack Rear View. And these records are so infused into me, and it feels like part of your life in a lot of ways, and part of a fuel and a driving force, not only for your workouts, but for the reason that you get up in the morning and go play baseball and grind around the country, not making a lot of money. And so, the music has always been very big, and I felt like part of a fuel and a fire that kept me going for a long time. And so without playing a little bit of music, I feel like it wouldn't do it justice.
That means yes.
Yeah. As long as we can make it work out, logistically, yeah, we're going to do it.
I don't know how we can say no to that. I'll have to figure. Sounds like a winner.
That'll add a little excitement. Anybody else for Bronson? For today, anyway? Bronson, thank you for your time. Thank the rest of you.